Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the J Area Podcast. My name is Jose, and to open up this episode, I wanted to first wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holidays as we bring the year to a close and we, enter the holiday season. Just wanted to go ahead and wish everyone happy times for this time of the year. And speaking of happy times, as you know, a part of this podcast obviously is to cover all news regarding the Bay Area, specifically the San Francisco 49ers, and the news about the Pro Bowl. We have 6 athletes that have been selected to be a part of the Pro Bowl this year. Our tight end, George Kittle, who will be entering his 4th Pro Bowl. Trent Williams, our left tackle, in his 10th. Kyle Juszczyk, the very best fullback in the game, will be in his 7th Pro Bowl. Talanoa Hufanga, a second year and his first time in the Pro Bowl as one of the safeties. And then Fred Warner in his 2nd Pro Bowl. And Nick Bosa in his 3rd to round out the San Francisco 49ers selection in the Pro Bowl this year. All very deserving of that selection. There were a couple of athletes that were omitted from the Pro Bowl. I think obviously the big names were Dre Greenlaw and Christian McCaffrey. Unfortunately, they weren't selected as members of the Pro Bowl. However, as alternates, Christian McCaffrey is a member of the alternates along with Jake Brendel. We have Robbie Gould, Ray McLeod, Deebo Samuel, Trevarius Ward, and Wisnowski, our punter. The Pro Bowl is an interesting case, though, because every year I feel like the value of the Pro Bowl has certainly diminished. Not only is it, a not-so-competitive game, but it's just lost its sense of appeal, given the stars. Not a lot of guys play the Pro Bowl that are deemed, top guys, if you will. And it certainly has become an afterthought for all NFL fans. I feel like it becomes a chore, if anything, to watch. I know every year I look forward to it because it's an opportunity to see so many of the stars and big names on the same field. But at the end of the day, it's, the competitive nature isn't there that it is in the playoffs or simply a regular season game. So I think it was a smart thing for them to do was to, remove itself from the game aspect and maybe go in a new direction. Regardless, though, the Niners do have 6, players that have been selected to represent the National Football Conference. Hopefully, they won't have to worry about it because they'll be in a different bowl game. I don't know. I mean, as of right now, they sit atop of the NFC West with 10 victories and currently hold the 3rd seed in the NFC. This past week, they had an opportunity to jump up to the 2nd seed, which, of course, they still do have that opportunity this week and the weeks to come. However, the Minnesota Vikings would somehow do the unthinkable. Well, first off, the Indianapolis Colts were doing the unthinkable because they were holding the Minnesota Vikings 33-0 at half. I am the kind of person that doesn't, believe it's over until it's over. So even at that moment, I'm thinking, okay, it's still relatively, there's a possibility that they could have come back. I've seen too many games to not have that sense of, hey, Minnesota could come back, because they do have a great offense with guys like Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, TJ Hawkinson at tight end. So they do have the arsenal to definitely put up some points, but their defense has been a suspect at best. And allowing a team like the Indianapolis Colts, who have been struggling all season, especially with a top guy like Jonathan Taylor at running back, they've been struggling all season. So to allow them to put up 33 points on them was surely a bad sign for Minnesota, because if you do that to a team like a Philadelphia, like a Dallas, like a San Francisco, I don't think they're going to be able to come out of that hole. But that's not the case for this situation, because they were able to come back and score 36-3, a 36-3 run, and they would defeat the Indianapolis Colts, coming back, fulfilling the greatest comeback in NFL history. And Matt Ryan now being on the losing end of the biggest comeback in regular season history and in Super Bowl history. Not a good look for Matt Ryan, not a good look for the Colts. Certainly not a good look for Jeff Saturday, who is the interim head coach. Frankly, I don't think he ends up with the head coaching job. I think it's just a temporary job for him. But that was certainly disappointing, because I remember going into work, heading into my shift, and seeing that they were up 33-0, and I'm confident. I'm thinking, okay, hey, we just locked up this. Well, we didn't lock up, but we had a great shot to gain that 2nd seed and secure 2 home games if possible, with the assumption that we win the first round. And as I'm at work, I have my phone off to the side and I'm listening to the game. And would you know it, they came back. They end up winning the game off of a last-second field goal, defeating the Indianapolis Colts, and again making the Niners wait another week for another opportunity at the 2nd seed. This week, the Minnesota Vikings do have the New York Giants to face, and hey, there is an opportunity there. Perhaps because the New York Giants are fighting for that wild card spot, maybe they can do the unthinkable and they can defeat the Minnesota Vikings, who are probably riding this high wave of momentum, thinking that, hey, we're world beaters. We couldn't lose that game, and they didn't. But who knows? The San Francisco 49ers, of course, this week have the Washington Commanders. It's going to be home, Levi Stadium. So we're going to need the audience to certainly do its part and welcome the home team and hopefully secure that 11th win. Currently, as I mentioned, the San Francisco 49ers 10-4, which is good enough for the NFC West division, as well as the 3rd seed in the playoffs. Washington with 7 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw, of course, to the aforementioned New York Giants. Ranked 7th in the NFC currently. If the playoffs started today, they would be visiting the Minnesota Vikings. You look at the Vegas odds here, and they have San Francisco at favorite at a touchdown. Personally, I think they're going to certainly cover that spread. I think they're going to win by 14. With Washington, of course, they're an interesting matchup because of the history that the Shanahans have, specifically Kyle Shanahan, who kind of had a bitter taste in his mouth towards the end of his tenure there, specifically dealing with the situation with his father and how he was let go. I do think that this is definitely a game he always circles on the schedule and looks to, handle his business and handle his opponent. As I mentioned, I do have them winning by a score of at least 14. Now, that's not to say that it will be easy, because it won't be, especially at this point of the season. Washington is trying to stay alive and maintain that 7th seed in the playoffs, just with Seattle breathing down their neck, of course. But I do think one name to keep an eye out is Chase Young. Chase Young will be making his debut this season in this game against the San Francisco 49ers, and the last time we faced the Washington Commanders with Chase Young, he dominated that. A forced fumble for a touchdown. I'll never forget it. It was certainly one of the more disappointing aspects of that season. But will he cause as big of an impact as we think? I don't know. We'll see. Because while they're having Chase Young come back, we're actually having Javon Kinlaw return as well. I don't think it's fair to say that he's on the same level as Chase Young. I definitely think Chase Young is certainly, more above a Javon Kinlaw. But I'm hoping that it'll, in a way, kind of offset the inclusion and the return of a Chase Young. Looking at the records, the San Francisco 49ers are currently on a 7-game winning streak, looking to extend that to 8. Currently have a home record, because this game is at home, they currently have a home record of 6 wins and 1 loss. Certainly one of the best home records in the NFL, and again, hoping to extend that record. But then you look at the Washington Commanders, and they're currently on a run of their own, although it was halted by the New York Giants. But prior to the 2 games against the Giants, they had won 6 of those 7 games. They were 6-1. Then they would lose to the New York Giants this past weekend, and before that, they would actually tie. So in the last, couple of months, they are currently having a record of 6-2-1. Not bad by their standards, of course, because in the NFC East, it was widely regarded as the NFC least, one of the worst divisions in the NFL. However, that is not the case this season, as the Philadelphia Eagles 1 loss, the Dallas Cowboys with one of the best defenses in the league, and again, a spot in the playoffs currently. And then there's the Washington Commanders and the New York Giants. As of right now, the NFC East has all 4 of its teams in the playoffs. If the playoffs were to start today, all 4 would make the playoffs. Good on them, certainly, but that's not the focus of this podcast. It is clearly the San Francisco 49ers, who are allowing a league best 286 yards per game, which again was first, and they're going up against a defense that is allowing 308 yards per game, fourth. So the number 1 and the number 4 defenses will be facing off against each other. You look at points per game, the Washington Commanders are 9th place, allowing 19.7 points per game, while the Niners are first, allowing only 15, which, as of right now, is currently the 3rd best points per game in the last decade. That speaks volumes as to how efficient and how physical DeMeco Ryans and his defense has been all season long. 15 points per game is nothing to be ashamed of. I'll tell you that right now. This defense is on fire. It's firing on all cylinders, along with an offense that has weapons such as Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and others, of course. I even haven't named Deebo Samuel, obviously because of his time with the injury, but he is expected to come back before the end of the regular season. Defensively, as I mentioned, San Francisco is number 1, Washington number 4, but then you look at the offense, and this is where it's really interesting because the Niners rank 7th, as I mentioned, with an arsenal of weapons that they have, and an offensive guru, as they like to call him, with Kyle Shanahan. You look at Washington, who ranks 20th on offense. That is the key difference because not only do we have a better offense, we have a better defense. And if we're able to limit them to scoring points and continue to put points on the board for ourselves, that spells a recipe for a victory, thus putting them at 11 wins and 4 losses. Now, obviously, I don't want to put my horses before the carriage, and you don't want to count too many eggs before you drop them. But I think it spells wonders for the Niners at this moment. They should have all the confidence in the world in their team in all facets of the game, whether it is special teams, defense, or offense. They are firing on all cylinders as of right now. The question is, how long can they maintain this momentum heading into the playoffs? Because as of right now, they're on a 7-game winning streak. We have 3 games left. If we can win all of those, that would finish off with a 10-game winning streak. On top of that, assuming we get the 2nd seed, let's just say, for example, we would have to play the divisional round, we would have to play the wild card round, the conference championship, and the Super Bowl. If we want to win a Super Bowl, if we want to be at the pinnacle and end up where we want to end up, you're talking about a 14-game winning streak to end the season, and that's what worries me. That's what has my concern, quite frankly, as a Niner fan. How long can this Brock Purdy train continue to roll on the tracks? If we're going to lose a game, I think it should be against the Cardinals or the Raiders in the last 2 weeks of the NFL season, because we've locked the 3rd seed, basically. We could lose every game coming forward, and we won't fall to 4th, because the NFC South has just been god-awful this year, subpar, as every team in that division is below 500. Of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are currently winning that division, but they're losing in the NFC. Let's just put it that way. I think whoever comes out of the NFC South has the potential to be a one-and-done. I don't anticipate them doing much with their time because they will have to face the Dallas Cowboys, who are no slouch themselves. They have one of the better defenses in the league, as well as a capable quarterback in Dak Prescott. And guys like CeeDee Lamb, and they have Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott at the running back position. I certainly expect whoever to come out of the NFC South to be a one-and-done. With that being said, of course, I digress. But I think that the Niners can't afford to get off momentum towards that point of the season because you're heading into the playoffs. As I mentioned, if they're going to lose, it's probably going to be one of the last 2 games of the season. Again, if the playoffs were to start today, we have the New York Giants, a team that I'm confident we can beat. I'm very confident we can beat them. Which, by the way, before I even move forward, the defense that we have, and you look at the New York Giants, who, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I could have swore they were 29th in defense, right? Which isn't the best. 29 out of 32 is not last place, but you're flirting with the line of being one of the worst defenses in the league. And they were able to limit the Washington Commanders in primetime to 12 points. Taylor Heineke, I'm not saying is supposed to be putting up 30. But when you have Taylor Heineke and you have, scary Terry McLaurin, obviously Brian Robinson as well, much respect to him given to how his season started, you limit them to 12 points and you're the 29th in defense. What the hell is the first place defense going to do to Washington? I'm not saying we're going to shut them out. I would love that. I certainly would not be opposed to a shutout. In fact, that's the dream. I love games where there's no sense of drama or danger, because when we're just shutting out teams, it's fantastic. Like when we faced the New Orleans Saints a couple weeks ago, it was fantastic. I love shutting a team out. But I certainly would hope that we put up a better showing than New York. Because if New York, again, 12 points on that defense, and that's 29th, I'm expecting the number one defense to hold them to what? 6? I'll say 7. I'll give them a touchdown. Because we always end up giving up a touchdown. There's always that one play where we let up and they just score on us. Which is, I don't want to say it's fine. Because honestly, it's not. But you're able to recognize and adapt and adjust. So if you're going to have them score early. Obviously in crunch time in the fourth quarter where, it counts. That's the money quarter. That's where games are won and lost. And the way it's been the last couple months, the San Francisco Niners have been able to adjust and adapt in the second half. In fact, there was a stretch where I think it was 5 games they didn't allow any points in that second half, which is phenomenal. That's great. That is why people have been putting them on par with the 2000s Ravens, which I think is a step in the right direction. I wouldn't quite say that we're, up there, because that's legendary status. But that only raises the intrigue that, hey, this is a Super Bowl roster. They talk about it all the time. Every position, there was someone who is either, Pro Bowl caliber or all-world talent. At the tight end position, obviously, there's George Kittle. At the wide receiver, there's Debo and Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey at the running back position. You have Trent Williams working the line on offense. Then on defensive line, you have a Nick Bosa. You have a Fred Warner working the linebacker. Then you have Jimmy Ward and Ufanga in the secondary. Oh yeah, did I mention we have one of the better kickers in the league, Robbie Gould. And our punter, Wisnowski, he's not too bad himself. And this is all before you even get to the quarterback, which is amazing to think because the quarterback position obviously is the most crucial position in football. It sounds like I just said fruit ball, but I promise you I said football. It is the most crucial position in football. And the fact that we have the last pick in the draft, a third-string quarterback, basically undrafted, he was borderline undrafted as our quarterback, and playing the way he's playing, that's the only position where it's like, okay, you raise questions. It was like that with Jimmy. It was like that with Trey. It's obviously going to be like that with Brock. But as long as Brock is able to continue to rock the way he's been rocking and play the way he's been playing, you can't tell me that we're not one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. I see teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Kansas City Chiefs, and the Philadelphia Eagles put ahead of us. Okay, that's fine. I'm not even mad at that. But I know we can beat the Bills, and I know we can beat the Eagles. The Chiefs, obviously, I get a little bit of post-traumatic, stress. But I think if our offense is able to operate the way it has been these last few weeks, and the defense, again, just stays true to what it has been all season, this is a team of destiny. And my brother gets really annoyed when I start talking about Super Bowls and championships, but you have to manifest it, baby. You have to start speaking into existence. And I'm past that point of superstition where, oh yeah, I can't say this because I might jinx it. Like, whatever I say, I don't feel like has any weight to what happens with them. They're going to continue to play the way they play. They're going to continue to prep the way they have prepped all year. So I don't think it bears any weight as to what happens in a game. It's just me simply supporting my team, supporting the guys that are on this team, and hoping for the best. Because for those that listen to this podcast, I'm optimistic. I try to be as positive as I can because any moment in negativity is a moment wasted. So why am I going to spend all this time dreading it? No, just face it head on, man. Washington Commanders, bring it. I know they're going to bring it. Why? Because everyone's been hyping up the Niners these last few months, and obviously it's going to be a big game for them. Certainly one that they would circle on their calendar. And it's Christmas Eve. Who doesn't want to win on Christmas Eve? I mean, I certainly want to win on Christmas Eve. Unfortunately, I work. My brother, who was able to get coverage at his shift, he'll be working in the morning, so he'll be home by the time this game is on. I don't believe it's going to be broadcasted in our city. But regardless, I will be working while this game is taking place, so hopefully it'll be a good day at work as the San Francisco 49ers take care of business with the Washington Commanders. Obviously, I try to be as optimistic as I can, but as we talk about the NFL, it's only fair that we bring up the NBA, and the Golden State Warriors have continued to really surprise me in a way I wasn't hoping, because heading into this season, I was a firm believer that we could go back-to-back, that we would repeat as champions, and that's not me just talking hyperbolic and obviously being biased. I genuinely believe that we ride this wave of momentum with guys like Kuminga and Wiseman stepping up, Jordan Poole stepping up, Curry, Clay, and Draymond continuing to play the way they play. But they currently have a record of 15 wins and 18 losses. And you look at the home and away records, and that really tells the story. At home, the Warriors have 14 games. They have won 12 of those 14 games. One of the best home records in the league. Fantastic, phenomenal. It's beautiful, great. I can't even complain because Chase Center has been rocking ever since we got it, man. And 12-2 is not a bad record. But when you look at that away record, it makes me want to vomit a little bit because 3 wins and 16 losses. 3 wins and 16 losses. That's abysmal. I think last time I checked, it was the worst road record in the National Basketball Association. Since our last episode, last week on Friday the 16th, the Warriors have won 1 out of 4 games. Not bad. They're, 25%, I suppose. They suffered a loss to the Philadelphia 76ers, losing by 12. They would defeat the Toronto Raptors by 16. Okay. And then they would suffer back-to-back crushing defeats to the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets, both by 30 points. 30-plus points, I should say, in the case of New York. They have become the first defending champions to suffer consecutive 30-point losses since the 98-99 Chicago Bulls, who granted didn't have Scottie Pippen, they didn't have Michael Jordan, they didn't have Phil Jackson. We do. We have our core. This team is clearly missing Wardell, Stephen Curry. In their last 10 games, they're 4-6. Good enough for the 11th seed and are now on the outside looking in of the play-in. Not the playoffs, but the play-in. Jordan Poole has been averaging almost 28 points per game these last 4 games. Not bad. Especially given the 43 points he scored in Toronto in that victory. But given the injuries and given the inconsistency of this defense and frankly their effort on the road, I think it's fair to say the Warriors will not be winning the championship this year. And I know with me, it's only December and I'm hopping off the train already. I will continue to support this team to the best of my ability. But yeah, I don't think they're going to be going anywhere this year. Which is why we move over next to the next goal in mind. Because we here at the J Area Podcast, we're very goal-oriented. We have to keep moving forward. We can't just stick ourselves in the past and dwell on what's going on then. We have to look forward to the future and how we can grow. That is why it's my hope that the Warriors decide to just tank and go for Victor Wembanyama, who is a French phenomenon with the size of a Yao Ming and the athleticism like no other. Man's got handles and he's 7 foot plus. He has a range, not only from the paint, but the mid-range, the 3-point range, and his ability to block is unlike anyone I've seen, quite frankly. Obviously, this is all tongue-in-cheek, and I don't think we're getting Victor Wembanyama, but I could dream. The Golden State Warriors, certainly in a state of flux, and that's okay. Because if there's one thing that my brother Jared and I have noticed is that you cannot have it all. In the cases of our San Francisco 49ers and the Golden State Warriors, we cannot have both teams win. And that's fine and dandy. I've seen the Warriors win 4 championships: 2015, 2017, 2018, and 2022. But the San Francisco Niners, I've only seen them lose 2 Super Bowls. And quite frankly, I can't bear to see another one. So that the fact that the Warriors are currently struggling, that bears well for my Niners. I don't care if it's by 1 point or by 30. A win is a win. And that's what I've learned all the way since grade school. A win is a win. So it is my hope that the Niners are able to alleviate the stress and strain that the Warriors have caused all us Bay Area fans. Because when you have a culture and a team that is built the way it is built in Levi Stadium, what more can you have than hope? And that's really all we're asking for here, folks. Because given that the San Francisco Giants somehow lost on Aaron Judge in 7 minutes, and then they go on to lose Carlos Correa because of his medical and his physical, we're back to square one. We're back to where we started. Granted, I won't sit here and lie to you and say I'm the biggest baseball fan, because I'm not. I'm a Giants fan, simply by relation to the Bay Area. And I've seen them win 3 World Series. Great World Series with the guys like Buster Posey, Mad Bumgarner, Pablo Sandoval, Brandon Belt, and our savior, Bruce Bochy. And those were good times. That's what got me into the game of baseball. But these last few years have certainly been a struggle, just as I fear the Warriors will have to endure the next few seasons. Coming out of the 2022 NBA Championship, I remember telling my father, Steph is going to finish with 5. And I still believe that to this day, even given our god-awful road record of 316. It just won't be this year. I would like to think in 2024, maybe 2025, there's a chance he finishes with 5. I think this team is too good in terms of culture and in terms of its built. I think that the athletes that are on this team, such as Clay, Draymond, and Steph, can still go. Of course, guys like Draymond and Clay, I would say, are now maybe riding off what was their prime. I still think Steph is fully capable of, doing Steph things. But don't expect Klay Thompson and Draymond to be what they were not too long ago. We're going to have to rely more on the Kumingas, on the Jordan Pooles, on the Wisemans of the world in order to reach that promised land again. But of course, this podcast is mostly dedicated to the San Francisco Niners, which is only fair because they're putting in all the work right now. Currently with a record of 10-4, I will not get tired of repeating that and reminding all our listeners that they are the current reigning and defending NFC West champions. That's right, folks. NFC West champions once again. So when the time is right and the season ends, that is when we will transition more towards the Golden State Warriors. Currently, of course, it's pre-Christmas, so a lot of the basketball that is being played right now doesn't really bear a lot of weight on what's going on in the playoffs. But certainly, past the Super Bowl and we enter the All-Star weekend, that is certainly when the volume is turned up a little bit more, and we're going to see a lot more competitiveness coming from all athletes in the NBA, as well as taking a look at the standings. And given that the play-in tournament is still in action, it adds another wrinkle of speculation and excitement to the NBA season. But as I mentioned, the Niners are currently on the forefront. I feel like are currently on the forefront of all Bay Area fans at the moment. It is an exciting time in the Bay Area for the Niner fans, of course, because, maybe in the Bay Area it's an exciting time too, because the Warriors can win at home with a 12-2 record. They just can't win on the road, which is one of the more annoying things that has gone on with this season, because every time I see it's an away game, I think it's safe to say we're either going to lose or we're going to find a way to lose. And it's a shame to say. But once again, I digress. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, I would like to thank you for joining us on this episode of the J Area Podcast. Of course, you can find every episode every week on a Friday on YouTube and Spotify. Of course, I wanted to thank everyone and give them major thanks for listening and continue to support the podcast. As always, you can find me on all social media platforms at justjose_3. Be sure to follow me and even send in some questions. Send in some requests on what we could talk about on the podcast going forward. Be sure to follow the podcast on Spotify or subscribe to the YouTube channel, J Area Podcast, where, of course, you can find each of these episodes of the show. Once again, thank you so much for dropping by and hanging out with us. And if you enjoy these episodes, be sure to leave a like. Comment your thoughts on the Niners season, as well as the woes of the Warriors and the mishaps of the Giants. Subscribe to the channel again, J Area Podcast. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, my name has been Jose. This has been the J Area Podcast, and I can't wait to see you next week.